Good morning, America, and hello to all our fellow veterans and their families out there. Hope everybody's doing good. Up here in Cleveland, it's cold and snowy, so maybe it's a good thing the Guardians lost last night, so we don't have to play baseball in the snow like they did back when they last went to the World Series. And everybody, I think y'all remember Kevin, my co-host. How you doing today, Kevin?
How we doing, Tim? Good, Tim. How are
Oh,
you?
I'm hanging in there. And matter of fact, I'm just going to go ahead and introduce our guest now. His name is David Root, and he served in the United States Navy from April of 1966 to January of 1970, and he obtained the rank of Aviation Ordnance Second Class E5 and made 3 Westpac cruises to Vietnam. He earned um, 2 Bronze Stars, National Defense Service Medal, Armed Forces I can't even say that word today. Uh, Everybody knows what it is.
Expeditionary.
Yes, yes, that's it. Vietnam Service Medal with 1 silver and 1 bronze campaign stars, and Vietnam Cross of Gallantry and the Republic of Vietnam campaign medal. And David first joined the VFW at post 5587 in Holly, Michigan in 1984, and is currently a Gold Legacy Life member. Thomas Mihalis Memorial VFW Post 1079 in Elyria, Ohio is now where he's serving. And he is now the state legislative chairman for the state veteran issues for the VFW. So, welcome to the show, David.
Well, thank you very much. If I could correct you,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want
Go ahead.
stolen valor going out here. I don't have 2 Bronze Stars. I've got 2 stars on my Navy unit commendation ribbon.
Oh, okay.
Big difference.
Mm. Now, since this show is all about Ohio, I hope everybody, all our viewers, stay on just because it is about Ohio. Stay on because you might learn something that your state should be doing for you, or you might have something that Ohio should be doing for its veterans. And we'd like to hear from your VFW representative for your state. Come on, talk about legislation for your states as well. So, y'all know what the email is. And also, the chat box is open. And before we start, today is going to be a special program. We are dedicating this program to Sergeant Wetnall from Ohio. His wife sent me an email asking me to get the story about her husband out. Brothers and sisters, our brother is not doing very well. He is in the hospital and he has stage 4 metastatic. God, I can't even talk today. Metastatic lung cancer, and it's now spread throughout his whole brain. And he's been fighting this since last March, and he is 41 years old, and he has undergone whole brain radiation, multiple rounds of targeted brain radiation, trust radiation, chemotherapy, and unfortunately nothing's working. So we are dedicating this show to him and his wife and 2 sons. His sons are age 5 and 11. And Sergeant Whitnall is currently at the James Cancer Hospital at Ohio State University. So let me show you all a few pictures of him here. Leave that one up for a second. All right, let's keep him and his family in our thoughts and prayers and send some positive energy their way because they can definitely use it. And today's episode is dedicated to this family. And matter of fact, as we speak, let me see what else we can do for this family here. All right. If anybody has any suggestions on what we can do for this family, go ahead and email us. Let me go ahead and put the email on the bottom here. All right. Email is scrolling on the bottom. Let's help this family out. They need it. I'll look into a GoFundMe account, see what we can do. If anybody else has any other suggestions, by all means, email me. Matter of fact, the chat is open. You can even chat me some ideas here. And also, if you have any questions for David as we're talking, go ahead and type them in the chat and we'll get them out to David. So let's go ahead and say hi to David again. All right. Now, in your current position with the VFW, can you explain to the audience here exactly what you do?
Sure. I have the grand title of legislative chairman, and state is in parentheses after that because I handle the legislative issues for veterans in the state of Ohio. I do not, although I keep an eye on them, I do not do anything with the national legislative issues. We have another gentleman that does that and has been doing that for years. But I go to the state house on occasions, sit in on hearings. I have actually testified at some hearings, depending on what needs to be done. I keep the word of what is going on, the issues, the bills that are before the General Assembly. I keep the members of the VFW and anybody else that's interested up to date on what's happening there and the status of the bills and so forth. I sent a lot of emails down to the state house to the representatives and the senators, giving them my humble opinion on what needs to be done with bills and suggestions on improving them, giving them ideas on. And surprisingly, not every bill that comes up that's supposed to help veterans do we want to see passed as they are written. Quite often, there's things in there we don't want, and I make sure they understand that. Also, trying to give them ideas on how to improve bills, what amendments might need to go in there to get it passed, and so forth. So it's basically educating, keeping myself educated on what's going on there, and then passing that knowledge on to the members of the VFW so that they're up to date on it also.
And I know you and Kevin have met a few times because Kevin kind of does the same thing up there in Michigan, but he also handles national issues as well. And you guys met at some conference here recently. Can you guys explain what that conference was?
Go ahead, Kevin. It was your conference.
So we had, well, actually, let me a little bit, and Dave and I got a little bit more in common than just the legislative. He actually, if he signed up in Holly, Michigan, that's where I went to high school. So we kind of circle the wagon. It comes full tilt, doesn't it, Dave? With that being said, but we met at a fall conference for Michigan. I did Dave to come up as the legislative chairman for the state of Ohio to kind of see how things. I had the honor and privilege of meeting him at one of our rallies, Tim, that we attended in for the PACT Act, and we've kept in touch ever since then. It's kind of nice to see the Big Ten the Midwest coming together, try to develop ways of taking a little bit of information from one state to another state and kind of our advocacy increase and get a little bit better for the state on the state level and related to the state on the federal level as well. You know, these bills are so important. And like you said, and the same thing in Michigan, you know, I recommend to the commandos he or she supports, and that's the ones we go with on the commander, and we write a letter of support for whatever those bills are. We are going through in the state of Michigan, kind of the same way as the PACT Act was built for one topic. We kind of want to make it an omnibus bill and take a little bit out of another and kind of make it an omnibus bill. But unfortunately, the way things are going right now with us in the state, probably similar to what Ohio does with pretty large veteran needs exempt program for the 100% permanent total veterans, 14 or 15 bills for that. So we do the same thing. We advocate in front of the Capitol in Lansing. We testify. We go to hearings. All the same. But you know, I think we need to just have like a little legislative meeting of the Midwest and the Big Ten, and I think that would help us probably promote our program a lot more efficiently.
I think that would be a great idea. We just had the Big Ten conference last weekend up in Wisconsin, and I met with the legislative chairman from Wisconsin while I was there, Jason Johns. He has actually sent me information on various things that he's working on there, that he's aware of have come into Ohio, that things he's done and what we're working on here, and how we can all get on the same page, like you say, to in the case we're working on one piece of legislation that we're dead set against, and we've been working together on that with a couple of organizations here in Ohio to make sure it gets defeated here in Ohio. And so far we've managed to stall it, but it's still on the table there, and we're keeping a close eye on it. But yeah, working together is something that needs to be done.
All right, before we get going with some questions here, I just want to give a shout out to Leroy and Rosie Torres from Burn Pits 360, who just logged on and is watching today's episode. We love you, Rosie. Hello. And we love you, Leroy. All right. Hello
guys. Good to see you.
Oh, yes. And David, the first one I want to get to, because this bill sounds very interesting for the state here. As HB 415, in-state tuition for veterans and their families. Now, is that free tuition, or is it like scholarship, or?
It's a scholarship. It's not a. I'm trying to think back on it, looking at the overall look on it here. It's not a complete free tuition, but it does. It is for the active duty service or the veteran and the spouses or dependents, which is important. And so where does that stand right now? It's somewhat stalled. It was introduced last fall, and they did have a couple of hearings, but haven't done much since February on it. But we are continuing to look at that and work on it. I can give you. Let me go through the background. Well, the summary is a decrease of the minimum duration of active duty service for veterans. So they're taking the qualification to, or the requirement to qualify from 1 or more years to 15 days. So they can basically get out or move to the state, and within 15 days apply for the assistance, the tuition assistance.
Mm.
It's for higher education, uh, and again, it's for the whole family of the veteran, and it applies also to current, like the National Guard and so forth that's here in Ohio.
Yes.
Uh, I'm trying to see if it doesn't really indicate. I'm not seeing if, and I don't recall that I've ever seen a specific amount.
Yeah, I didn't see that either when I read the bill.
I think
And
it basically, I don't have the actual text of the bill in front of me, but I think it basically, if I recall right, it's opening it up. It's basically reducing what we already have, the time frame of
okay.
how long you have to have been in the
And
state to qualify for it.
and it also sounds now too like if somebody gets stationed at like Right Pat, after 15 days, they'll be
Correct.
eligible
Correct.
too if this passes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now that's good because the way higher education costs are these days,
Yeah.
there's no way any veteran or their family can afford to go to college. So
No.
bills like this, I support 100%.
Yeah.
And hopefully this one gets the motivation to move forward. And
Yeah.
uh,
I'm not sure as you're I'm sure aware, we're as it is with the federal level, we're at
mhm,
least in Ohio, we're in a lame duck session. Uh, we are on summer break still. We don't go back into getting busy again, really, and doing any work until after the election, November 8th. So we're
right,
basically looking at 5 weeks of work to get all these bills passed. We know it's not
mhm,
going to happen.
right,
We're hoping to get as many as possible done, and the rest are going to have to be rewritten and reintroduced in this after the first of the year. But we're working on as many of them as we can, and it. I think you going into the lame duck session, as Kevin mentioned, you get an omnibus bill. Quite often, that's how at this time of year you end up getting things done. This is slowing down. This is slowing down. This is slowing down. Let's all put them in this bill that's really moving along and get it all passed at once, and that's
mhm,
how things get done. So quite often you don't realize a bill has passed because it's been taken and used as an amendment to another bill and passed that way. So, but we're watching every single one as much as we can, trying to get them done.
all right. I'm trying to get a slide generated here real quick to inform our viewers what an omnibus bill is.
We had one just passed recently. It's what I refer to as one of the minor bills. It didn't benefit a lot of veterans, but what it did was we had several bills, probably a couple of dozen bills on the table for taking bits and pieces, bridges, parts of highways, and so forth, and naming them after veterans that have been killed in
Mhm,
action or that type of thing, which is a good thing, and we want to see that as if we can, a great way to honor them. And there were, like, say, probably 15 of them. They put them all into one bill and or put them all into an existing bill
mhm.
that was about to be passed, and passed them all that way as one bill in another bill. So uh, it saved a lot of time in hearings and votes on the floor to get them passed.
All right. And now hopefully this one with the tuition moves forward. And the next one I want to discuss is SB 160, information about healthcare. Now,
Yeah,
living in the state of Ohio, I know we have the Veteran Service Commission, which I've had many a talks with a lot of their higher ups there concerning the PACT Act and the way they were getting information about burn pits out to veterans and stuff, and how they were falling behind the curve with the rest of the country. They seem to have improved quite a bit. Matter of fact, when I first started talking to the commission, we ranked number 6 in the nation as far as veteran population. We ranked like 45th as far as services provided for veterans. We have now moved up to, I believe it's 24 as far as services provided. So that's a huge jump in the last 2 years,
Yes,
which
it
I'm
is.
very proud of. Now, this bill is kind of wishy-washy with me because I've been doing some roundtables with Senator Sherrod Brown here in the state, and at each roundtable he invites that county's officer from the Veterans Commission.
Right.
Now, the larger counties are getting the information. The smaller counties are not. The larger counties were told to hire more individuals to help the influx of veterans coming in for information and to help them with their claims due to the PACT Act. The smaller counties are not getting any love at all. Now, if this bill moves forward, do you think this bill will correct that?
Okay, let me make sure I'm looking at the same one. Did you say SB or HB 160?
S is in Sam.
Okay, because there's one in each. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's what I thought you were referring to. SB 160 actually has already passed, and Governor DeWine signed it into law back in June. But to answer your question, it's not going to affect the problem you talk about uh, as much as you think it will. There's another problem with the veterans, and not just the county veteran service officers, but the VA, county veterans offices, and any other uh, organization that's available. The chartered, congressional chartered VSO'S. The average Joe Blow getting released from military duty, be it after 2 years or 20 years, doesn't know that there are all these organizations out there available to them to help them with any problems they may have. That's the purpose of this bill. What it will do is, if a veteran is in hospice, or if they are being treated for anything, and being released from any medical problems they're having by the organization that they're there with, this bill will require that organization to give the information to that veteran or the spouse or whoever's representing that veteran on where they can go to get benefits and so on. So they're and if I can read one little section, will explain it a little bit better on the analysis here. But as an example, a nursing home or skilled nursing facility, when a veteran seeks admission to the home or facility, this requirement it doesn't apply to the veterans homes, but or a hospital discharging a patient requires those facilities to tell that veteran and his family where they can get further help. They need to tell them about the congressional chartered VSO'S like the VFW, American Legion, AMVETS, and so forth. It needs to tell them about the county veteran service organization, give them the information on how to contact them in their county and that type of thing, and how to contact the VA so that they can get further information and help from those organizations. So it won't help getting information out of Washington to the VA, but it will help get the veteran to the VA, and that's
Okay.
the purpose of it. So,
All right.
and we're glad to say that yes, that did pass, and the governor signed it, and it went into effect in last month. So we're good
All
there.
right. All right. And Kevin, do they have anything like that in Michigan that you know of?
Yeah, they're supposed to. I mean, it's kind of like everything else. It's what actually happens. It's unfortunate it has to be a law in the first place because automatic when a veteran comes out of a situation of a hospital, go to your service organizations, your VFW, American Legion, AMVETS, DAV, whatever, or thinking probably outside of that is okay, my husband or wife just had X or this problem, I need more medical attention, so the first place I'm going to go to is that people don't think about normally is in Michigan here, and I think you guys know, we have what's called the Michigan Veterans Affairs Administration. Charter's the right hand of the governor's office, and also the VA is that there's both of those organizations through the MVAA, and we are actually trying to gain a together with we have what's called the commanders group, which all the commanders from each organization come together to discuss topics like and other topics, and now we're going to get a seat at the table with the governor's office, AA, the Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency, to tackle these veterans issues happening. Should be doing. We should automatically be doing this stuff so nobody falls through the cracks and get the right information that's imperative to their quality of health, life, extending their health, and the services for the families too. It's not just that need their support as well. So hopefully that might be something for all already that that Dave, you guys want to look into to try to get with everybody to kind of, with the smaller counties, the bigger counties, the rural areas, and get those words out with the VAs, and having conversations with the VA to help and support one another with health issues and recommendations and stuff like that. So we're trying to circle the wagon in here and get a better. And sometimes, as good as we have, and the social media outlets that we have doesn't reach, and so we're trying to get those far-reaching people and those people on these social media platforms to get the health and care that they need and duly deserve.
All right, that sounds good. And next one I want to tackle is this one. I had a little trouble reading, and it kind of made me think that maybe some agencies are asking a little bit too much. This bill is SB 213, and it requires state agencies to ask the status of veterans.
It is one that has not gotten too much traction at this point. But what and I think it's only had one hearing at this point, and that's from the sponsors of the bill. So I haven't gotten much feedback from the pros and cons of various organizations on it. But it deals with state educational institutions, the metropolitan housing, workman's compensation, and things like that. Let me double check a couple things. I don't want to say the wrong thing and give people the wrong information here. Uh, yeah, what it amounts to is very similar to SB 160 that we just talked about, but it encompasses more organizations and institutions to basically, again, inform the veteran and his spouse, dependents, children, and so forth, uh, if he's not there or she's not there, what benefits they have and where to go find them is what it amounts to. It's again, it may not have gotten the traction it should because of SB 160, although 160 doesn't cover the organizations and institutions. This one does. This one is more geared toward the educational field, getting the state educational organization, counselor of higher education, and so forth, to make sure that a veteran, and it basically is both these bills. It's basically trying to get all the organizations out there to start asking anybody that comes in, "Are you a veteran?" Okay, well, here's what you've got available for you, and that's, I think, the whole purpose in this. And like I say, I'm not sure why it hasn't gotten a lot of traction. Sometimes these legislators write the bills, and then they just let them float along on their own power and don't really push them too well. Uh, Although I do know this senator, he's pretty good, so I'm not sure why the stall on it. It's been a year now, and it probably won't go anywhere before now and Christmas when the session ends. So unfortunately, it'll probably go back. Hopefully, it may have some problems that people are talking about, and it'll get rewritten when it resubmits in the next General Assembly.
Almost sounds like this could be turned into an omnibus bill along with SB 160, since they're kind of both on the same subject.
It could. And it's possible. I haven't seen I haven't read all the text of the final SB 160, but it's quite possible that bits and pieces of this were uh, amended into 160 before it passed and was signed by the governor. I'll have to go back and look at that.
Mhm. That's the one thing that researching these bills I noticed. See, with I know with national bills, it'll state if it's combining with another bill. When researching these, I couldn't find
Yeah,
any way if two bills were going to be combined or anything like that. So
that's
it made it rough researching some of these.
yeah. I have that same problem, and I wish I had some sort of influence on the state house down there and the running of their website, which, by the way, is uh, legislative legislature.ohio.gov for people who want to follow these bills and know what's going on your own. Uh, but that website doesn't give you the information, the detailed information that you need to follow it and know what's going on with the bills. It tells you if it's had a hearing. It tells you if it had a vote, but it doesn't tell you when it gets mixed up with other legislation and
Hmm.
into an omnibus bill and so forth. So it's hard to find that information without actually contacting the
Right.
legislators involved with it and asking them what is happening to it.
Tim, are you talking about a companion bill, one in the House and one in the Senate, or are you talking about something differently?
Something different where either house they would combine these two bills together. Like with the PACT Act, they took several bills
Correct.
that were not getting any traction. They just put it all into one and called it the PACT Act.
Right.
So that's what I'm talking about here as well.
I gotcha.
Because
So Dave,
both these bills they're kind of the same um information in them and
yeah.
looking to do this basically the same thing. So maybe that's why this one stalled pretty quickly.
Gotcha.
And
Although you mentioned
let me ask you,
I'm sorry, you mentioned a companion bill. That's another thing that it
yes.
doesn't have on our Ohio website is if there is companion bills, you don't get a reference from one to the
Right.
other like you do on the Nationals
Right.
website, where it'll say there's a companion
Gotcha.
bill or 6 or 7 bills that are similar, and you can reference them all. Ohio's doesn't do that, so you actually have to go to both and see, if there's a companion bill and actually look at it and see if it's companion or just similar or what it is. So. But Nationals does a much better job than Ohio does. I wish
yes.
we could give
Now,
them some more leads on improving it. But
now we just got a message from Kimberly Hughes saying she loved the coffee mug. So we might have to look into doing some merchandising here, Kevin.
Right. That's right. So, Dave, let me ask you a question. And but it seems like since it's an election year, and you always got to love an art moving very quickly during an election year because they're out campaigning and doing all this other stuff. Walk me through the nuances of just getting one bill passed. I mean, I know there's several nuances of you got to build a relay network, you got to, do this and do that. So walk us through a nuanced experience in the Ohio legislature that you've dealt with, that story about a bill that you thought was going to go through and it didn't, or it came to you and this bill got created, or how does this all work just to get one initiated? Kind of like the Schoolhouse Rock thing. We got a bill on Capitol Hill,
don't ask me to sing.
Yeah, that's right. What is it like to do this?
The basic principle is a legislator will have an idea from a bill, and he may get it. He or she may get it from a constituent or just something on their own or somebody they've worked with in the past. But they'll get the idea for bill. There's a division in the state house that will look at and come up with the legalese and the actual wording for creating the bill, and then it is typed up and ready for presentation, and then they'll submit it. They'll introduce it into their chamber. If they're a representative, it'll be introduced into the House first. If they're a senator, it is introduced to the Senate first. It gets read on the floor and accepted, and then gets referred to a committee, and that committee goes over the bill. It has the hearings. It determines whether it's a bill that's worth becoming law or not. They'll have generally 3 hearings or more, but the first hearing is from the sponsors, the authors of the bill. The second hearing is for those that are in favor of the bill, and the third hearing is for those that are opposed to the bill or for anybody, any interested party. And if it's a lot of conversation going on, then they may have a 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th bill or hearing rather to discuss it some more. But eventually the committee will vote to either in favor of it or against it, and they will vote. And if they vote for favorable passage, then they send it back to their chamber, who then looks at it, and there may be discussion on the floor, but they'll vote on it. And if it passes their chamber, then it gets sent over to the other chamber and goes through the same process again. Gets read on the floor, referred to a committee, hearings in their committees, back to the floor for a vote, and then if they vote on it, it goes to the president to the governor for their signature to make it law. If there was amendments somewhere along the line, let's say it started in the House and went to the Senate liked it, but they made some amendments, and they voted on the amended bill, then it has to go back to the original chamber, back to the House, and they have to concur on the amendments. If they concur, then it goes to the governor. If they do not concur, then it's pretty much dead. that's the simplest explanation of what goes on, but there's a lot of, as you call them, nuances as to what actually happens. For instance, you have to keep in mind that the progression of a bill is going to be the responsibility, if you will, of one person, depending on where it is at the moment. If it's in the chamber, if it's in the House, on the chamber in the House, or the Senate chamber, then the Speaker of the House and the Senate President can just sit on that bill and never send it anywhere. If it's in a committee, that committee chairman can sit on that bill. Because they don't like it, they're not even going to bring it up for hearings. And it'll die just sitting there. And that happens all too often. It's a shame that one person can kill a perfectly good bill that is passed in both chambers or both in committees unanimously, and one person can say, I don't like that bill, I don't think it should go anywhere, so we're not going to have hearings on it. It's unfortunate, but that happens.
So let me ask you a follow-up question, if I could, please.
Sure.
So when do you get word of a veteran bill? Is that in the beginning, or is that later on? Oh, by the way, we just threw in House Bill 240, 160, and we want to get your guys' opinion on it, or we want to get a letter of. Is that during the beginning stages, or is that later on during the hearing process?
That's going to depend on the person coming up with a bill. If they have, I don't want to say stupid people, but if they think about it, they will get that advice. If that's what they're asking, what do you think of this bill? They're gonna try and have a round table or something before they write the bill, not after they've dropped it and introduced it in their chamber. But that does happen, and unfortunately, that's what delays some bills. Is they'll write something and it looks good and it sounds good and it's the greatest thing in the world for veterans, but it just has a little thing wrong with it, and then that holds it up because you're having hearings back and forth and it delays it, and then they've got to go and, well, okay, how do we fix this so that they'll go with it, and it delays it that way. The preferable way is to, if you're writing a bill dealing with veterans issues, that you get with the veterans that you're writing a bill for. Either the VSO'S, the service organizations, or the county veterans offices, or the advisory board, Veterans Advisory Board in the state, somebody, and get some ideas as to what's good for them, because it may look good on paper to a civilian, but not necessarily really doing what they think it will do. Quite often we'll have, we don't get any notice on it unless they're asking for information or our input. But so every week I look at the session and see what new bills were introduced that day, and I look at them to see, does this have anything to do with veterans? And quite often it won't have the word veteran or military or anything like that in it, but it definitely will affect them. We're working a bill right now that doesn't have those words in it at all, but it's a bill on preventing lawsuits for asbestos claims. Now that definitely affects the veteran.
Yes, it does.
Yes.
But we didn't find out about it until it went for its first hearing, and we jumped in after that. But so we have to look for them, we have to find them, and then if there's something we don't like or we think it's a good bill, I get in touch with that author of that bill and say, okay, how can we help you? Or you've got a little bit of a problem here. Is there any way we can get this fixed? The last thing we want to do is go in on their third hearing and with 4 or 5 veterans and all start talking and tearing down the bill. We just soon work with them beforehand before it gets to that point. And quite often it works. Sometimes it doesn't. End up in those hearings talking about how bad it is and it needs to be worked on. So.
And I think we're circling the wagon backwards by going by relationships going backwards a little bit. So when a bill does come for premonition or something like that, and it does have a military or a veterans thing on it for the veterans that were involved in the initial stages of this first or second or third hearing by God, just because of the fact that we're trying to, like you said, don't worry about getting it stalled, and if we're unsupported in this, getting through, and if we're pushing this through, and that's what part of the commanders group was developed for, that so that way all the veteran service commanders are there. We support, we don't, and we need to change this or change that. Like I said, the nuances of a bill. It's just that networking and those relationships that have to continuously evolve. Now with an election year, some of those seats are going to be changed over. So then it's like you got to roll over. So people just think, well, why can't they just pass this bill? This bill is easy. Why can't they just pass it and explain the process a little bit more? Because it's just not, I agree. It's a little bit more involved than just that.
Yeah. It all goes back to that catchphrase. There's politics involved, and
Yes.
you get two or three people involved in something, then you've got two or three opinions on how things should be done, and
Correct.
consequently, it's back and forth and back and forth. So you're right. Opening the doors ahead of time, working and communicating before, as the process begins, is the best way to go. So.
All right. Now this next one. It's about safe shelter. Now, was this the bill that they were voting on and the co-sponsors pulled it off the floor?
Yes, this goes back to what we were just talking about. The bill was a great bill, and it had two hearings. The second hearing in May. The two authors of the bill, who by the way are both veterans, pulled the bill. Well, in terms of how things are done, just so people, if they hear it, they'll understand. They passed the bill back to the House chamber with the recommendation that it be permanently postponed, which basically kills the bill. They did not vote to kill the bill. You've got to use their terminology. When you hear it, then you'll understand what they're referring to. So that's what happened. The reason for it, and I was at that hearing when all that transpired, and it created a big roar. But the bill was introduced in the fall and didn't get to that second hearing until spring or early summer. The purpose of the bill was to try and create permanent and more permanent and temporary housing for homeless veterans.
Mm-hmm.
The purpose is a great one. The facts and figures that they had from the two organizations they got them from came back 6 months after they had introduced the bill and told them that all the facts and figures, the number of veterans that they had given them, 700 or whatever it was, 700 veterans when they wrote the bill were homeless. By the time it got to the second hearing, they maintained that all but 42 of those had been housed, and there was no longer a need for it. In doing a little bit more homework at that point, they determined that the facts and figures that were given to them were based on eligible, legal, according to the Ohio Revised Code. A veteran has to be honorably discharged to be a veteran and get any service. There were a whole lot of veterans out there that were homeless that did not have honorable discharge. They had other than honorable, and therefore weren't in those figures that they were given. So the numbers were skewed way out of
Mhm.
proportion, unrealistic. They postponed the bill knowing that they're not going to be able to get it rewritten or any work done on it during the summer. But they promised to have roundtables and come up with better information during the summer and produce a new bill when they went back into business in November. I doubt it'll get pushed that fast to get it approved and passed before the end of the year, but at least they'll get it started and can reintroduce it again with better figures in the spring. So that was the purpose, the reason for it. And again, goes back to our conversation, doing the better job of putting the bill together in the very beginning and talking to the right people,
Right.
avoids these delays. But the bill will come, and it'll be based on better figures. So,
Yeah, because me researching it today, it's saying there is 730 veterans in the state of Ohio that are honorably discharged and are homeless.
right. The other thing that they didn't give you were there's a whole lot of veterans out there. They talked about homeless, but they were referring to unsheltered veterans.
Mhm.
There are a lot of homeless veterans that are sheltered, be
Right.
they living with a relative or they're jumping from
Mhm.
house to house for friends or whatever it may be. Those are sheltered. They don't count them as homeless. That's another reason that that's
Right.
I mean, that's one of the things when it was brought up. Every veteran I talked to in most of the veteran service offices in the counties all said, "Where did they get this 700 number? There's a heck of a lot more than that."
Right. There is.
Yeah. So again, they're re-looking at the figures, and trying to come up with a better bill that will address the situation in its reality and not in its dream
Mhm.
world.
Matter of fact, they can go to Wade Park in Cleveland, go to any of the waiting rooms in Wade Park, and you're going to find at least 2 to 3 homeless veterans sitting in that waiting room.
That's right.
They sit there all day. The staff feeds them.
Uh-huh.
When it's time for the staff to go home, they usher them out, and then they come back the next morning.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a lot more than 730 homeless veterans in this state.
Right.
Now,
Other thing that people don't realize is the fact that you're finding out all this information, collect all this data and all this information to help support or get the right information. So this bill or any bill, and that so you're 33 homeless veterans. You're looking up, education we talked about earlier. You're looking at shelters. You're looking at Nation Act on health care. So kind of the legislative position, Dave, because this is the way I feel. You tend to get involved as being a representative of trying to find out all this information with all these bills, and that you wouldn't think that that you got out of school, you wouldn't have to do any home trying to find out about education and shelter and homeless vets and women's health and women's rights and voting, and you got to pay attention to the election to this. There's a lot more to it than just saying I passed 5 bills or we passed on it or whatever the case may be. So walk us through a little bit of that, kind of your homework, that if you wouldn't mind.
I'm not sure I got all of you said because you broke up a little bit there, but you're looking at the steps on getting good, reliable information to write the bill. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Well, again, it's let me take one bill that was just introduced a week or two ago. It hasn't been assigned to a committee yet because we haven't been we're on summer break, but we're keeping an eye on it to see what happens to it. But it is a bill to our, as Tim knows, our county veteran service offices all have a commission of 5 members, and they represent the Veteran Service Organization. There's one from the VFW, there's one from American Legion, DAV, and so forth. There's no there's no requirement for age or service when they served. They had to have been a veteran. A representative, or I'm sorry, a senator just dropped a bill because he determined that only 14% of those commissioners were post 9/11 veterans. And he felt that that was way out of line, that we should have more younger veterans in charge of the veteran service commissions. I agree. I would like to see more. It's the same in the VFW and American Legion and everybody else. We're all looking to get younger vets in because the old ones are dying out and are getting brain dead. But his information was correct, and he put out a press release that 16 or 14% was not sufficient. It should be much higher. And I immediately went and researched just online, and what I found was, of all the veterans in Ohio, I could not find a figure for the number that were post 9/11, but I did find a number that were from Gulf War to current. So that's actually a 10-year longer period than post 9/11. That number is 15 point something percent of the number of veterans in Ohio. So he's right in line with what we have. We have 200 and some thousand veterans. 15% of those served after Gulf War.
Right.
He's complaining that the 14% that are serving on the commissions doesn't represent the membership, and it does. His bill would require at least 2 of those 5 in every county to be post 9/11. That would make it over 40% would be post 9/11.
Right.
He's not thinking, he didn't do his research, he didn't talk to the right people. Every veteran service organization, every director that I've talked to since then has said, that's not going to work.
Right.
He could have talked to 3 veteran service commissioners and gotten that information quick and easy. That won't work. Right. I understand his frustration of getting more younger veterans in to do these jobs, but that isn't how that bill isn't going to accomplish.
Yeah, like you said, that's all of our frustrations right now.
The opposite. Now he's losing the experience of the older vet to get things done. So that's an example. You just got to go to the right people to get the information for the bill you're looking at trying to write.
Now you brought up a good point about the younger generation, the post 9/11. They're the ones giving us a lot of pushback about the PACT Act. So that's why I'm starting a college speaking tour here. I'm going to colleges in the state of Ohio, speaking to the veteran community and their families at these colleges, and trying to get them to at least register on the burn pit registry through the VA. A lot of them are saying, well, I'm not sick. You're not sick yet.
You will be.
Now it's time to be proactive. Sign up on the burn pit registry, get that physical in, get your name into the VA system. This way you and your family are prepared, because chances are you're going to get sick, and you're going to get sick severely. So it's
evidence building too.
Trying to get them to be proactive. So that's why Sherrod Brown asked me to do a speaking tour to different colleges throughout the state to get the word out to these younger, the post 9/11 veterans, and say, hey, you got to be proactive. And And I see you want to say something there, Kevin.
It's just, I mean, you got to get the word out and make evidence collection and
Hmm.
for your experience while you're there. I mean, when I did my 2015, I got kicked off that registry 4 times, and I was resilient because once I finished it, but there's no data collecting on if somebody signs into that thing and then I'm not doing this anymore. There's no data collection on that. I think Ohio's got over almost 7,000 up on the registry. Last time I checked, when I went and visited one of your things in DC. Tim knows who I'm talking about, but
Hmm. Yeah, Senator Portman told Burn Pits 360 and Jon Stewart that there were not enough Ohioans sick from burn pits for him to care. I believe that is one of the reasons why he's retiring. It's because he knew he made a big mistake right there. Because he mentioned retiring shortly thereafter. Now let's kind of move on here because we're pushing our time limit here a bit. Not that we actually have a time limit, but this is important information. The last bill I want to discuss is SB 361. And it's about veterans being able to become teachers in the state of Ohio, even though they are not certified.
That is a bill that Senator Hoagland just dropped 3 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Senator Hoagland is a retired, I believe, chief petty officer. He's a retired SEAL,
Yes.
and his heart is in the right place, wanting to do accomplish two things. He's always trying to help veterans, which is a wonderful thing, and in this case, he's also trying to help the educational system, because at this point, and mostly due to the COVID pandemic for the last 2 years, as with any profession out there, they're hurting for employees, and in this case,
Yes.
we're hurting for teachers. And so, what he was trying to do with this bill is to make it a little bit easier to become a teacher, and because of his background with the military, he picked on veterans to, how can we get some of these veterans that have some experience while they served? Maybe they were an instructor in boot camp, or they were instructor at one of the A schools, or various schools, and spent 3 years teaching other veterans, other military, how to do their job. Why not use that experience and help them become teachers? Again, the principle is sound. Yeah, that's a great idea. But what he's put into the bill, I don't think it's going to fly. It needs
Right.
needs a
It
lot
needs
of
a
work.
lot of work.
I reached out to two of our representatives that I respect very much, who are retired teachers. One of them has not responded back yet, because I just sent this email out a couple of days ago. The other one called me up yesterday, and we talked for quite a while. And he likes the concept, as we all do, but most of what's in this bill isn't quite right as far as teachers go. Uh, some of the requirements aren't enough of a qualification to become a teacher.
Right.
I also reached out to my son, who teaches up in Michigan, up in Midland. He's been teaching for 20 years at Midland High School. He spent 6 years in the Navy, so I figured that's a good person to ask, somebody that's military and a teacher. And he pointed out a number of flaws in it. Again, he liked the concept. He definitely appreciated the thought of helping them out, and they transition out of service. Hey, they can become a teacher. They don't have to go to school, for another 3-4 years to get that certificate. This will fast track them into the profession. So he liked that concept. But again, he looked at a couple of things that didn't work as far as being a teacher. He looked at a couple things that weren't fair. For instance, nowhere in there does it mention that any commissioned officer can become a teacher. It's all non-commissioned officers
Right.
or less, lower. That didn't seem fair at all. We've got a lot of our officers out there that have been teaching and doing more teaching and training than the non-commissioned officers are. So why aren't they included? So it has a lot of work to do. We will get with Senator Hoagland. We will work with him and hopefully come up with something. But I don't foresee this happening before Christmas and the end of the General Assembly.
Now, going through some of the requirements that it lists, I qualify to become a teacher in the state of Ohio due to these requirements. I've got the college hours, even though I don't have a degree.
Uh-huh.
And I was a certified trainer in my squadron.
Okay.
Doesn't state what type of trainer you need to be in those requirements.
That's what everybody's saying. That's one of the things.
I know I cannot teach math.
Yep.
I know I cannot teach science. I might be able to teach art because I'm an artist.
Yep. You can teach a photography class.
Right. Now, one of the examples that the senator mentioned when speaking about this was a jet engine mechanic is certified to teach shop class. One, most high schools in the state of Ohio don't have shop class anymore. Two, jet engine mechanic, does he know about woodworking? Two completely different subjects.
Yeah.
And a jet engine mechanic, unless he's a woodworker as a hobbyist, when he gets off duty, is not going to be able to teach shop class because he's not going to know about woodworking. It's two different concepts.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody in the military that taught math or taught history or science.
Yeah.
You know, everything was military related. Now, speaking with some teachers in the state of Ohio last night, some of them thought that this bill was, because I guess there was a bill at one time to put armed veterans in all the schools in the state of Ohio, and that didn't fly. They thought this was a way to get around that because they're still trying to push teachers carrying guns in schools. In order for a teacher to carry a gun in school in the state of Ohio, they have to go through training.
Right. That bill has passed.
Mm-hmm. The veteran does not need to go through that training. And according to the state of Ohio law, if a veteran is hired to work in a school, they automatically are able to carry a gun in the school. So, speaking with the teachers and the union for teachers in the state of Ohio, thought this was that workaround to get veterans into the system so they can carry guns in the schools. Because they're like I just said, are these veterans qualified to teach math? Are they trigonometry, geometry, science, any type of science, biology? Are they certified? Are they able to teach these classes that you want them to come and teach? But the biggest thing that the teachers that I spoke with were like, we went through all this schooling in order to teach because we have a passion for it. And we have to continue our education as we are teachers. These veterans won't have to do that. They won't have to go to school, keep going to school to keep their certification current. Because they're not certified. You know, so that was out of the several that I spoke with last night. That was one of the biggest things to us. Teachers that went through college in order to become a teacher they have to continue their education in order to stay certified.
Correct. Yes.
These veterans will not have to do that. So
Right.
they thought that it was a slight to their profession that the veteran will not have to continue higher education in order to stay a teacher, to where non-veteran teachers will have to.
Yep. I agree with you on a lot of that stuff, and I don't. And like I say, quite often when a bill gets written, I have to look at it and say, yeah, I love helping veterans, but this bill isn't going to fly as written. And I always make sure I say as written, because I want them to know I'm not against the bill. I'm against some of what's in the bill. And I'm willing to help you come up with a bill that's written properly to get passed for the benefit of a veteran. Because not everything, well, yeah, it'd be nice to automatically give every veteran that comes out of the military a job as a teacher. Is that really accomplishing anything?
No.
So, as written, it's not a good bill, and Hoagland can be a little hard-headed sometimes, being a retired SEAL. How well he'll listen to some of his cohorts that are actual teachers, we'll see. He does have one of the co-signers is a teacher, a retired teacher, so I don't know what he's up against, but I don't think it'll make it before the end of the year. That's for sure, and it'll have to be rewritten anyway. So hopefully he'll do a better job when he rewrites it.
Is that circumventing the troops to teachers plan that they had initially? The troops to teachers. You guys hear about that before?
No.
Troops to teachers is if somebody wants to be a teacher, you go to a school, you sign up to go in these rural areas to become a teacher for school with your experience as a veteran. The state of Michigan's kind of loosening up a little bit on their teacher qualification, say that they don't have to have a college degree. I have a college degree, and I couldn't imagine criminal justice, which is not anything in the high schools and the elementary schools, just because of my experience. I have heard of the program called Troops to Teachers, and maybe that's where they're trying all that time of those extra 2 to 3 years of coming out of there and getting them in the classroom. But it might behoove them to look at the plan from Troops to Teachers and kind of a little bit to see if that might be something that would be helpful for that bill. I don't know.
Okay, I'll look at that and see how it's put together. That might be helpful.
All right, and I think that's going to do it for us today. So, David, I highly appreciate you coming on and speaking with us today. And
I certainly appreciate you asking me. I'm glad to spread what little knowledge I have.
It's a lot of knowledge. Just talking to you at the rally at Senator Portman's office in Cleveland, I definitely knew there's a lot of knowledge there. And also, let's not forget here. Let me bring up this gentleman again, Sergeant Whitnall. Let's help his family out, folks. Give me suggestions on what we can do. I'm going to look into a GoFundMe. If that's the direction we take this, I will start posting that on the Facebook page and on the website. And our brother's family, they're hurting. So let's keep them in our thoughts and prayers and send some positive energy their way, because they can definitely use it. All right. Oh. Once again, David, thank you very much. And as always, Kevin, my brother.
By the way, if anybody would like to talk to me about any of the issues going on,
wait a minute, let me put you on full screen here. There you go.
You can email me there, or you'll find me on Facebook. Just put David K. Root in the search engine, and I'll pop up.
Yes, he will.
I'll be glad to help listen to any ideas you have, or help you with any questions you might have.
All right, I want to thank our viewers for joining us today. And as always, let people know we will have this on YouTube here in a little bit. And it'll be on iHeart, Pandora, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, all here within the next couple of hours. All right, everybody. Thank you,
good.
America. Thank you, my brothers and sisters, and hope you all have an awesome rest of your day.